Your client.
All right, we ready?
Yes, you're ready.
All right, so good evening, everyone. This is the Needham Board of Zoning Appeals. And as you just heard, we're being recorded. We're also being broadcast over the Needham cable line, so don't say anything that you don't want to go out into the public. I always say that if for some reason, for a technical reason, we can't continue the hearing, it's continued until next month so that we don't have to re-advertise. But so far, over 2 years, we've managed to get through every hearing without the internet clunking out on us. Tonight, we have only one substantive matter, which is the Rosemary office complex, but we need to start with approval of the minutes. Someone want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so let me read the notice of tonight's hearing. 145 Rosemary Street, EIP Rosemary LLC, applied for a special permit under sections 5.1.1.5, 5.1.2, 5.1.3, and any other applicable sections of the bylaw to waive strict adherence to the off-street parking number and parking design requirements. The request is associated with Wellesley Family Care in Boston Ortho, a medical office space which will be occupying units formerly occupied for general office space. The property is located at 145 Rosemary Street in the Industrial 1 and Single Residence B district. So on that, I believe we have Mr. Huber. Welcome.
Thank you, members of the board. It's been a long time since I've seen you.
No, I saw you at the planning board meeting Tuesday. You didn't see me. I was on.
Yeah, those meetings are a lot of fun. This is 145 Rosemary at the intersection of Rosemary and Hillside. Dan Dumais from our traffic consultant MDM is here, and Dan, I think, is going to be screen sharing to show you some slides. So this is just to help orient you with the site at the intersection of Rosemary and Hillside, if you're not familiar with it. Can you go to the next slide, please? And this is the site plan showing the building. It's a mixture of medical office and general office space with a number of tenants and 284 parking spaces on site. Over the years, this board has been presented with and has granted special permits waiving strict compliance with the parking space number and parking design requirements for a number of tenants, the most recent of which was in 2019. And at that time, this board was asked and did agree to grant a special permit waiving the requirements of strict compliance with the number of parking spaces, as well as the design requirements, which was a request that's been repeated over the multiple special permits that have been granted with respect to this site. Since 2019, there's been a number of changes in the occupancy of the building. There's more vacant space. Some of the tenants have moved around, and there are now 2 tenants who are proposing to occupy in part space that 2 medical office tenants who are proposing to occupy in part space that was previously permitted as general office space. Could you go to the next slide, please, Dan? So the 2 tenants who will be occupying space that was previously designated as general office space are Wellesley Family Care and Boston Orthopedics. Dr. Jen Snyder is here for Wellesley Family Care to answer any questions that you may have. We're not intending to have her be an official part of our presentation, but we wanted someone from Wellesley Family Care to be here in case you have any questions, as is Dr. Hartshorn, Tim Hartshorn, who is here on behalf of Boston Orthopedics. So if you look at this chart, which we also included in our application, as an exhibit to the application form, you'll see that there's this suite C1A, which consists of 2168 square feet. And Boston Orthopedics is going to be occupying suite I, which has 3262 square feet. You add those two together, and you get 5,430 square feet of medical office space, which was previously permitted as general office space. So as the board knows, the parking requirement for medical office is higher than it is for general office. For medical office, it's 1 space per 200 square feet. For general, it's 1 space per 300 square feet. So the net effect of this proposed change is that the parking requirement as determined by the bylaw will go up by 9 spaces. So this chart shows the current and proposed occupancy of the entire building. And when you add up all the numbers from general office and medical office, you get the number at the bottom, total calculated parking requirement under the bylaw of 364 spaces. As I mentioned earlier, there are 284 spaces on site. So we are short by 80 spaces. And, but the actual parking demand as determined by a number of methods by our traffic consultant MDM is less than the 284 spaces that are on site. So Dan is going to speak about that in a moment. The other thing that I want to sort of bring to the board's attention is that in addition to the seeking a waiver of the requirement for the number of parking spaces on site, we're also seeking a special permit waiving the requirement for compliance with certain design requirements for the parking spaces. Those are included in a letter, one of the letters that I submitted to the board regarding parking lot illumination, width of maneuvering aisle, parking setbacks, parking space setbacks, landscaped areas, and trees. These are the same waivers that have been requested and granted in prior applications for special permits. The only other thing that I wanted to bring the board's attention to, in particular, before turning it over to Dan from our traffic consultant, is that this application has been reviewed by the various town departments. No one had any comments except for Dave Roach, from the building commissioner, and he submitted a letter which I thought was, very helpful, and basically saying that he's reviewed the traffic analysis and the parking analysis that MDM has done. He has no issue with it. There's never been any complaints about parking at this site that he's aware of. He thinks the site is well managed, and he has no issue with our requested waivers. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Dumais to discuss MDM's analysis of the actual parking demand at the site.
Hi, good evening. Dan Dumais, Senior Project Manager with MDM. So the first thing we did is we wanted to do an inventory of what the existing uses at the site were generating for parking. So we went out, we set up the parking lot into various zones for inventory purposes. And then we went out on 2 weekdays. The first one was November 1st. It was a Tuesday. And then we went out on Thursday, November 3rd, and we inventoried from 8 a.m. all the way through hourly until 6 p.m. to get the core hours of the use. And there's 284 spaces on the site. And at the time of the counts, approximately 65,000 square feet of mixed use space was occupied, resulting in a vacancy of approximately 17,000 square feet of office, and 4,000 square feet of medical office were vacant at the time of the count. So we'll go through the data. This first one is the November 1st, the Tuesday, again, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. You can see the late morning but 178 was the peak, a little bit low at lunch, comes back up to 161 and then back down. So the peak demand was 178 spaces out at the site, which you'll see in a minute, results in a parking ratio for this site about 2.73 per 1,000 square feet of occupied space. The second one is the Thursday pattern. You can see it's very similar patterns, except they happen to be a little bit slightly lower day. Late morning. The chart at the bottom got a little messed up, but again, this is around 11 a.m. in the morning again, 161 spaces on that. What we wanted to do then is look at two different methodologies for coming up with parking on the same. We're going to look at industry standard parking rates and empirical parking rates. So the first methodology we're going to look at is based on empirical data. So this top one is the current permitted uses at the site, existing tenants, 65,000 square feet, 2.73 parking rate. Again, that's that 178 number that you noticed on the highest of the 2 days on the Tuesday. And if we infilled the vacant office and the medical office, so all of the vacant square footage based on the rate observed, we're estimating about 236 parking space demand at peak, which is well below the 284. The method 2 down here is we're going to convert the office to medical office at the 5,430 square feet, and then infill based on the 2.73 for the existing tenants and the office uses. And then we used an empirical rate standard across the state, which is 3.0 spaces per 1,000 for medical office, and you get about 239. So it's about a 3 space difference between the transfer of the 5,430 square feet in terms of empirical methodology. This 239 spaces result in about a 16% surplus at the site. So it'd be plenty of vacancies to account for day-to-day fluctuations, and pretty well managed to find a space on the site. So that was method 1. We looked at the second methodology was industry standard basis based on ITE parking rates, 5th edition, and we looked at the 85th percentile rate. So those are basically your design rates for any of the land use categories. And again, we looked at the permitted uses, the 2.73, so we held at 178. And then for an office vacancy, it's about 3.3 is the ITE 85th rate, so we infilled that. And then we infilled the vacant 4,000 square feet based on a 4.59 for a medical office, which is the 85th percentile for that one. We get 254. And then we used the methodology down below for switching over that 5,430 square feet from office to medical office. And you can see it results in approximately 7 additional spaces, and 261 is the peak demand on that peak Tuesday condition, which results about an 8% surplus. It's about 23 space surplus out there. So it's well below the 284 provided, even under this worst case scenario. So we believe that the parking used is going to set up this site very nicely. This just shows graphically what's going to happen. This is the Tuesday is in blue. So that 278 is right here. And then we're going to add in all the vacancies. So this vacancy includes vacant office and medical office using the industry standard higher rates. And you get that 261 around 11:30, then all the other time periods are lower. So even during that critical time period, you're still left with about an 8% surplus, which is well within industry standards for what you should have for a parking lot. So you don't have to go around finding that one spot. 5 to 10% is a very good number, and should manage the parking needs of this site very well. I'll happy to answer any questions, or we can go back to Evans to close it out.
Anyone have a question of Jonathan?
No, it's a good explanation and good graphs. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Huber.
Well, so I think at the risk of repeating what Dan just said, my takeaway as a layperson listening to what he's saying is that worst case scenario under the more conservative of the 2 methods of determining what the actual parking demand will be at that site, you still have a peak of 261 cars wanting to park on this site where there are 284 spaces. So even with that more conservative method of calculation, and even looking at the highest point in the day to demand for parking, you're still going to have more parking than all the anticipated demand. So for that reason, we think it's justified to give a waiver for the of strict, waiving the requirement of strict compliance with the number of spaces required under the bylaw.
That's a question.
And I take it there's no change in the parking configuration, be the same design as previous.
Yes, that's correct.
Can I ask a question, please? ADA compliance, has the lot been updated with the various ADA requirements?
Dan, do you know the answer to that question?
I do not know. I know that the this previous plan is the one put in place, but I'm not sure if it's ADA compliant. It does have what appears to be about 8 handicap spaces, which for a lot of this size is a reasonable number, but I'm not sure if they're compliant with all the different regulations.
If I could jump in, this is John Hennessy. Thank you for your time. Each one of the entrances, one of the benefits of the building is there are a lot of entrances around the building. So it's not at each site, but each one has what we're told every time we go for a building permit is the appropriate amount of ADA spaces, ramps, and railings. So the building is compliant.
And I presume the building inspector would have said something about this if there were a problem.
Correct.
All right, so just to go through what we have heard, as Mr. Huber said, the building inspector discussed this and basically said he had no problem. The planning board had no comment. The police had no problems, fire had no problems, and neither did the health department. Does anyone on the board have a question before we open this to the public?
I have one question. Mr. Hennessy, where was Rodman located at one point on the site plan?
They were in entry A, a long-time tenant, 20+ years before my time. And it was a pretty busy office. It's been, Evans indicated some tenant movement. Bierman ABA moved around to that space.
Got it. Thank you.
I have
Okay.
one more question.
Go ahead.
The chart about the total of 86,000 feet, after these 2 proposed uses, I can't quite figure out what's going to be remaining vacant. I'm just trying to flush out what's going to be next. So Wellesley Family Care is presenting taking 2 separate spaces, the one that's labeled C1A 2168 and then C2, is that correct?
Yes, so apologize for the confusion here. The way this chart, so you see there's 3 entries, 3 line items for unit C1A.
Yep.
Currently, all of C1A is vacant. The proposal is that Wellesley Family Care is going to be occupying a portion of C1A, which is currently vacant, 2,168 square feet, as well as C2. C2 was previously permitted as medical office space, so the only issue here is the portion of C1A that Wellesley Family Care is going to be occupying as medical office, which was previously permitted as office. The other thing that is going to be vacant is, well, you see unit E is vacant.
So how many square feet will be vacant after
Well,
these? tenants move in?
17,000 is what I'm getting, between 17 and 17,500. Is that correct, Counselor?
Dan, do you happen to know the answer to this question? Or John?
The only vacant space is the remainder of C, and I'm trying to grab it on this chart.
It's
that would be the-
4,000 in C1A plus E.
And then E. So I think it's closer to 12,000 square
Isn't
feet.
it 10 plus? Yeah, it sounds like 17,000. I agree with
Okay.
Nick.
Oh, are you saying that the aggregate of C1A
Yeah.
is the proposed, so 6186 minus 2168 is 4018, is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Yeah.
I apologize for the ambiguous way this chart is presented.
So 4,000 plus 7,000, 11,000.
Yeah, got it. So, but 11,700 feet is gonna be vacant.
Yes.
Correct. And that's rentable square footage.
Yeah,
And all of that, if it would be currently as office and 1 per 200 square feet,
I mean, one per 300.
300.
One per 300.
300. Yeah.
That is correct. The vacancy currently permitted office use.
So it only raises an eyebrow if they try to lease out the additional 11,000 for medical. And that's going to be a more
But then,
expensive part.
then they have to come back to us because again, the new tenants would have an increase.
I have no issue with what's presented here, but I mean, off of the practical, I think we said the practical was 2.73. So once you get fully occupied, I think you're gonna be exceeding your 284 number. So,
But it's close.
yeah,
We've been looking at this for, I think, a decade now, and each.
I saw, it was the round robin of the board. I think everybody's shared a separate meeting on
Just
this.
to respond to Mr. Tampkin's comment, I think, Dan, tell me if I'm summarizing this correctly. Part of one of those charts, what he was showing was that if all the vacant space is reoccupied as currently permitted, plus Wellesley Family Care and Boston Ortho going in as medical office, if that happens, the anticipated peak parking demand is still going to be less than the 284.
Oh, got it.
That's correct. So we infilled using the higher ITE rate, so higher than the 2.73. We infilled any office at a 3.3 and any medical office at a 4.59. That's how you get to 261. So we believe these are conservative. So we believe they'll still be well below that. It's probably going to be between 239 and the 261 is probably the reality, somewhere in between.
Fully occupied.
Fully occupied, correct. We've done, this is our 9th memo, I think, on this one, going all the way through the different ones, and the 2.6 to 2.7 is about the range we've seen on all of them, even with the minor changes every time. So it may go up slightly from the 2.73, but we believe it's going to be pretty close.
Thank you.
Okay, Daphne, do we have anyone from the public who wants to be heard on this?
1 second. We have one raised hand, and I'm going to promote that person. It's E. I promoted E as a panelist.
Yes, and please give your name and address when this person comes on, please.
Hi, thank you. I'm kind of new to this, so I just wanted to ask a couple.
Could you give us your name and address, please?
Sure, I'm at 100 Rosemary Way,
Okay.
which is the condo complex right down at the end of the street.
Right.
My primary inquiry is
What's your name?
just,
What's your name, please? Your name?
it's Mary Ellen
Mary Ellen what?
DeWinter.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to ensure that the parking situation, I wanted to follow up on the gentleman who asked about the ADA requirements, because I do think that's important to make sure that that is considered. And also that the spaces would obviously be within the footprint that you've shown on the diagram, that they're not extending onto the street in any way. I'm also just conscious of the level of traffic that goes up and down Rosemary, especially in the summer, and with children and so forth in the area, as well as all the traffic that goes up Hillside Avenue as a result of the Senior Community Center. I'm sure that most of you have kept this in mind, but I just wanted to make sure that I brought it up tonight. And also, you know, given the space that's still left in the Rosemary Park to other potential tenants, that there's an expectation set that obviously, you know, somebody's may have less parking spaces allotted to them. Some of that space, if I interpret this correctly, is still a good size. So, you know, to limit or make sure that any future tenants are aware that they may not get as much parking as they themselves might be anticipating.
Well, I mean, some of those questions have already been answered. We discussed the ADA and the building inspector did not comment on it. So I'm assuming that they're in compliance, and Mr. Hennessy said he believes they're in compliance. None of the parking spaces we're talking about are on the street. They're all on the site. And the parking study that we received has calculated a projected use for the vacant space, and there still is substantially less than the 284 spaces on the lot. I hope that answers your questions.
Yes, it does. And I joined the meeting a bit late, so maybe you covered it before I heard that. But I just wanted to make sure that we were considering seasonal changes too. So.
Okay, thank you.
Traffic.
All right, thank you. So is there anyone else, Daphne, that's interested in being heard on this? Oh, you're muted. Daphne, you're muted.
There are no more hands raised.
Okay, are there any further questions from the board?
We
If not,
want
I'll
to
entertain a
discuss-
motion to approve this.
What was it? Do we want just to talk at all about the other waivers in addition to numbers of spaces, or feel that it's been covered previously in the different decisions and nothing has changed?
Well, they've indicated they're making no changes at the parking lot. Mr. Huber mentioned the design waivers that they need. And we've done this 5 to 10 times before. And I think our general practice is that if people aren't doing any construction or changing the lot, that we go along with what exists. So I think that's what they propose, and I personally have no problem with it. Doing again what we've done in the previous.
Yeah, Evan has outlined his waiver requests in his memo. We've looked at this 9.5 times. I think they manage the property very well. I attend to doctor's appointments or other visits there, and my only concern is at some point a conversion of the general office to really a medical hub may push you against the capacity for this site, but we're not there yet. So I'm a support of the application.
All right. So more, Mr. Goldman, or are you ready?
No. I'm also in support, and I just wanted to just to reflect for the record the request for the other waivers. And we've had a discussion now that there's been no change, and in the past the decisions have dealt with that. So I just thought it would be important for this hearing to cover that as well. But I also think the presentment is clear that the parking lot appears to be underutilized, and that the existing 284 spaces seem sufficient. So I am in favor of this application.
You want to make a motion to approve it?
Sure. Move that the applicant's request for special permit in sections 5.1.5, 5.1.2, 5.1.3, and other applicable sections of the bylaw to waive strict adherence to the off-street parking numbers and parking design requirements as set forth in the application for 145 Rosemary Street be approved.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chair.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, gentlemen
Good luck, doctors.
and ladies.
Thank you for your time.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
All right, so,
Thank you.
so before we conclude tonight, I want to inform the board that I've been engaged in a discussion with the planning board about zoning amendments. I've attended the last two planning board meetings. And I want to let you know where they are and if there's a further chance to weigh in if any of you feel that you want to. First, they're finally acting on the request I made 3 years ago to eliminate the need for a special permit for 3-car garages in Residence B. But they're not going to give me everything I asked for. Where they seem to be headed is that you can have 3 garages of right as long as they're not lined up along the same plane facing the street. So if you set the 3rd garage back 5 feet from the plane of the house, or if the 3rd garage is on the side, then it would be allowed of right. And if you want to have 3 garages all lined up, then you're going to have to come for a special permit. I made my most eloquent argument to keep it simple, but there's some people on the planning board who really have a thing about garages facing the street. But what they're doing, I think, will eliminate at least 70% of the garages coming before us. So for instance, in the case of Nick, he would have been allowed to do it of right because the garages are on the side and they're not on the front.
That's where we all got to meet Nick.
And you know, and most of the cases we've had recently were in that situation where the garages were not lined up. And moreover, what I think is going to happen is, at least as far as developers are concerned, rather than coming in for a special permit, they're just going to make the 3rd garage back 5.
It's a fair compromise, and thank you for advocating for that.
There was one member of the public who came to the planning board hearing and said he thought this was all wrong, that the neighbors ought to have a right to comment when a 3rd garage was going in, but that did not seem to sway the planning board. But it's a long way from here to town meeting approval. The second one, which is far more complicated, is that they're contemplating a substantial expansion of the ADUs. I mean, basically, this is driven by the Affordable Housing Committee wanting to open up ADUs for affordable housing. It's also driven in part by me pointing out that what they now have is so restrictive that we've only had a total of 10 ADUs allowed in 3 years, because it really is very restrictive. Where I think they're headed is that the biggest change is that they're going to allow ADUs to be occupied by anyone as long as they submit a 1-year lease. They're also going to take out some of the restrictions, like it has to be the primary resident of the lessee or family member or caregiver. And they're going to do what I asked them to do way back at the beginning, is add grandparents and aunts and uncles as family members. The second and maybe bigger part of what they're proposing to do is to say that you can have an ADU in an accessory building with a special permit. And it could be part of another accessory building, or maybe even a separate accessory unit. I mean, that they recognize may face some substantial feedback when they go to public hearings, but that's where they're headed. I guess the other thing I didn't mention is they're going to allow the owner, they are going to require that the owner be on site as a primary residence, but the owner will have the option to move into the ADU and rent out the whole house for some, say, some elderly person who's looking for income. So that's where they're headed. The next step is Lee Newman is going to make a 2nd or 3rd draft, which will be circulated, and then it will go back for final planning board approval. Then, as I understand the process, it goes to the selectmen. And then if the selectmen approve, it comes back to the planning board for public hearings, and then ultimately and hopefully on for the May town meeting. So if any of you have an interest in getting involved in the process, Daphne or I can send you the next draft when it comes out and the link to get on the planning board meeting.
John, is there a limit on the number of ADUs per lot?
Yeah, one.
Okay.
And they're keeping all the current restrictions, 1 bedroom, 850 square feet. And the big thing, of course, is that they have to I forgot one other thing. They do have to maintain the look of a single family house. But for ADUs that are in the house, as opposed to in an accessory building, that is no longer going to require a special permit. That'll just go to the building inspector.
John, you mentioned that there was the Affordable Housing Committee that was somehow part of this, but I didn't hear you mention income criteria. That
Well, no, it's not income limited. I mean, the notion is that Needham just doesn't have affordable places to live. And if you have 1 bedroom apartments attached to houses, that may create a lot of additional units that people could afford to live in.
No, that's great. Thanks for your efforts to shepherd
But no,
this through.
it's not income restricted.
Mhm. That's good. That's interesting. Now, John, is this part of a broader trend throughout the state to broaden the ADU capacity?
Yes, I think I don't have it off the top of my head, but I think a bunch of towns have taken this step as an attempt to create affordable housing units. And of course, the big response is there was a person at the planning board saying, oh, you're allowing 2-family houses in a single family neighborhood. Well, you kind of are, but they're limited to 850 square feet. And they're going to require that the owner be on premises in one or other of the units. So it really isn't quite like saying this can be just a 2-family house. But that may get a lot of pushback. On the other hand, I don't know how we're going to create affordable housing units in Needham. I think yes, it's going to require some change in the community's attitude, but I think this is the single easiest way to create affordable housing units in the town.
It also may create more, just thinking about other people may be thinking that it could be more students, greater demand on schools.
Well, I mean, and they're 1 bedrooms.
Not for the homeowner moving into the 1 bedroom and renting it out. So,
Yeah.
obviously, if everybody's a family member, makes it much more palatable to the people who see it as a 2-family. Interesting discussion.
Well, it's going to be interesting from here to there, and I'm glad I'm not on the planning board well, first of all, I'm glad I'm not on the planning board trying to decide even what they propose, because Daphne said the planning board meeting went until midnight on Tuesday, and they still didn't, and that was the second hearing. There were other things on their agenda besides this, but this took an incredibly long time, and they're going to have 1 more hearing. They're probably going to have a special meeting to keep this moving forward, but they kind of made a whole bunch of policy decisions on Tuesday night and have sent it back to Lee to do some drafting. So again, if anyone wants to get into this, just let us know.
Great. Thank you for your effort, John.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
John, I just want to bring up a couple of administrative things that are coming up for next month. One, we have been asked to have 1 single signature page, how we used to have it. The town clerk wants to have it go back. We are the only outlier that does it the way we do. So, and also the Registry of Deeds frowns upon it as well. And it was okay during COVID. So we need to go back to 1 signature page with 3 signatures. So what I propose is John will be the first signatory, and you just send it to me through, just now that you're in Arizona, when it's ready for signature. and you said overnight it, and then I'll get it out to the other 2 signature people to get it signed. So that was one.
That's interesting because it's contrary to everything else in legal world that is all counterparts, including countless signature pages on recorded documents. It's
You know, I could, if you want, I could go and check with Chris Heath. If you would like to continue it being 3 pages.
I think we should go digital.
Yeah.
You know, that,
DocuSign.
Why don't you ask Chris to see if they can push the town clerk at least as long as we're having Zoom meetings, but.
all right. I will-
Let me also say, if this becomes too burdensome, my understanding is that you can do it with a single signature of the chairman. It's been our practice to have the board members who vote on it sign off. And I've been in favor of that because I think it makes people pay a little more attention when they have to sign. Although with the way we've been shuffling it during COVID, that probably has gone away. You know, you're no longer getting the decision put in front of you to sign off. So if this becomes too burdensome, we can just go to having the chairman sign the decision.
DocuSign.
What?
you know what,
Oh, we can go
The
to,
registry
why
takes
can't we go to
DocuSign, John.
DocuSign like everybody else?
you know what,
John, it's called Stabby Sign. We got a solution for that too.
I will look into all of the options that I heard. And then number 2, I am going on vacation for the first 2 weeks in February. And so what I just want to let you know, I'm going to try to get everything done ahead of time as much as I can. The applications for next month are coming in on Monday. So what will happen is I can get your packets out before I go on vacation, but you will not have the comments. And that I will leave it to Alex to forward to you.
That's fine.
And then that way you have your packet, you'll have the meat of the applications. And from what I know ahead of time, we have 2 ADUs. So now you'll have 12.
It works.
So I'm hoping to get as much out to you, as much of the information, so that when I'm gone, it's just going to be comments from the reviewers. And I'm trying to maybe push them to get their comments in so that maybe I can have those, but that will,
That's fine.
it'll be,
Thank you.
Alex will be stewarding the projects, and I'm hoping to have as much as possible out of the way, like all the pre-meeting stuff out before I leave. So I will be around.
We'll miss you.
Oh,
I
thanks.
hope you're going to someplace fun on your vacation.
I'm going to Panama.
Awesome.
Yeah, I try to,
Well,
we try to go yearly, but you know, the last 3 years we didn't go. So, so it'll be fun. The
Well,
other,
you may not know, Daphne grew up in Panama.
yeah, my mom's Panamanian, so I'm going to
Oh,
see
wow.
relatives.
Wow.
So,
jealous.
Somebody in our
and we
office
have
who
a,
went there recently
me?
for a wedding and had a great time.
yeah,
Panama.
and you know, we have a place up there.
That's
And
fantastic.
so that's, yeah, so it's nice. And I just saw like in Phuket, that's where we go, and that's where the house is. It was on the New York Times last week of the 50 places to see in 2023. And I'm going,
Wow.
maybe I should go somewhere else on this list. But the other thing I think that pretty much covers it in terms of me being out. Clay, of course, will be coordinating, you know, Clay, who would coordinate with me in the early days of COVID. And so he's online, and he has Alex is on deck in case something happens. You know, people are just dropping like flies with either COVID or colds or stuff like that. So I have a backup as Alex to shepherd the meeting in February.
And what is that date again?
The February
19th.
meeting is the 16th. And I will know about all the
February
cases.
16th, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll know about all the cases, and I'll keep John I'm going to keep you guys all informed a little bit ahead of time, like quorum counts, you know, like that, I know that that's a tickler. I'm always sending it like on a Monday or Tuesday before the meeting. So it's sort of just like a refresher, like, you know, okay, if I get a quorum count, that meeting is this week, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm going to try to get all that stuff up ahead of time. So you'll be good to go.
I have a quick question. So I'm looking at the chart of the meetings. There's
Mhm.
one meeting in August 17th, a Wednesday. Is that correct?
A typo.
It's a typo if it's on a Wednesday.
Thursday.
It's a Thursday.
No,
This is a
Yes,
Thursday.
did I write Wednesday in front of it?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's a Thursday. The 17th
Thank
is
you.
a Thursday.
I won't be at that one.
Yeah, we know
Oh,
where
you're
you'll be.
gonna be at your home
You get
elsewhere.
a Greece, nice.
And Daphne, just remind us, we're Zoom for February and March and then have to come back in person in April.
That's
Donut
what I
time,
hear, but we
John.
don't know whether the governor is, what the new governor is gonna decide. But I have,
I'm going to Methuen for my vacation.
Doing,
It's
No, I
nice there
have-
this
I
time of
just-
year.
doing.
I have been in touch with Mark, and so Mark with cable, about making sure that if you do go in person, that we have the room with the best technology, if in case we have to go hybrid. But I have booked the other room, which would be the select board room, because that one we know is good.
And
And
what month is that?
April?
April.
either
April,
March or April.
April.
Starting in April.
Yeah.
April 27th.
So I've booked the, you know, like if you look in your calendar, you can see that that's booked at that room. But
Mhm.
that really is based on technology and based on what I get, you know, from Mark. I know that I've been charged by John that we don't want to move into any place that is just not being able to give the best, you know, the best kind of experience for the public if we do have a hybrid. And the best hybrid experience you can have is in the select boardroom.
Well, it's pouring out
Is-
tonight, so I'm glad we're not meeting in person. I'm just hearing the rain in the background.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
that's
I
great.
gotta,
That's great.
yeah, I gotta go with that. All right, so until March, everybody.
Have a wonderful vacation.
Have a great trip.
Thank you. You
Safe
guys,
journey, safe
great
journey.
seeing you all. All
Thank you.
right,
All
Take
right,
well,
guys.
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
See you
We're
guys next
adjourned.
month. Bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye,
We're
everybody.
adjourned.
Nice to see everybody.
oh, wait, who do you want to write this decision?
I'll do it. Don't,
Okay, oh, you know what? I'm gonna try to write it tomorrow.
okay.
Great, all right.
Good night.